Cruising at an altitude of 19,000 feet, everything in the cockpit of this cargo plane seemed perfectly normal, and the crew was busy navigating the flight, a completely routine workday. But just a few meters behind them, out of sight, someone was secretly preparing for something. Until, in a split second, everything spirals out of control. Memphis, Flight 705. We've been attacked. I repeat, we need a SWAT team. Welcome to another bizarre case on Flight 404. April 7th, 1994. Memphis International Airport in Tennessee, the global headquarters of FedEx. Flight 705, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10 cargo plane, is preparing for takeoff. The aircraft is scheduled to transport a load of electronic equipment from Memphis to San Jose International Airport in California. During the pre-flight preparations, a man named Auburn Calloway boards the aircraft. The 42-year-old was a former Navy pilot and a flight engineer for FedEx, but he wasn't part of the active crew for this flight. In aviation, there's a practice known as deadheading, which allows off-duty flight personnel to travel as regular passengers on their company's planes to reach their next assignment. Using this rule, Auburn boarded the plane, carrying a guitar case, and took a seat in the jump seat area right behind the cockpit. The first member of the core crew to board is 39-year-old Andy Peterson, the flight engineer. On a DC-10, his job is to sit behind the pilots and monitor the hydraulic systems, cabin pressure, and engines, allowing the pilots to focus entirely on flying the aircraft. Peterson is surprised and slightly startled to see Auburn in the back. While having a colleague deadheading wasn't illegal or highly unusual, Peterson simply didn't expect to see him there. After a brief greeting, he gets to work on his pre-flight checklists. While checking the panels, Peterson notices something strange. The circuit breaker for the cockpit voice recorder, or the black box, has been pulled, and the device is powered off. Without overthinking it, Peterson pushes the breaker back in to turn the recording system on. Minutes later, 49-year-old Captain David Sanders, with over 8,000 hours of flight experience, and 42-year-old First Officer Jim Tucker enter the cockpit. Tucker had a brilliant track record flying anti-submarine patrol aircraft in the Navy. This was an incredibly experienced crew. Everything is ready for departure, but right before takeoff, Peterson notices that the black box circuit breaker has popped out for a second time. These breakers don't just trip on their own. Bewildered, he pushes it back in again. He had no idea that someone on board was absolutely determined to ensure that no audio from this flight would be recorded. With the black box reconnected, Flight 705 accelerates down the runway and takes off without a hitch. The aircraft begins its climb to a cruising altitude of 19,000 feet. But why had Auburn brought a guitar case instead of a standard flight bag?
He was scheduled for a disciplinary hearing the very next day, and he knew with absolute certainty that he was going to be fired. His career was on the verge of total destruction. In the dimly lit area behind the cockpit, Auburn opens his guitar case. There is no instrument inside. Instead, he pulls out 2 heavy hammers and a spear gun. Based on a previous schedule, Auburn believed that today's crew consisted of only 2 people, one of whom was a woman. He figured that with these relatively low-profile weapons, he could easily overpower them. About 20 minutes into the flight, Auburn storms into the cockpit, wielding the hammers. In a brutal surprise attack, he first smashes a hammer into Andy Peterson's skull. Before the others can even react, he unleashes a flurry of heavy blows on Tucker and Sanders. Their skulls are fractured, blood splatters across the panels, and all 3 men are pushed to the brink of unconsciousness. Auburn steps back and levels the spear gun at them to break their resistance, but despite their massive blood loss, the crew refuses to surrender. Peterson lunges forward and grabs the spear tip. Captain Sanders rises from his seat and grapples with Auburn. Tucker, still strapped into the first officer's seat, realizes that half of his body is becoming paralyzed due to severe brain trauma. To throw Auburn off balance in the back, he grabs the yoke and begins maneuvering this colossal cargo plane exactly like a military fighter jet. He rolls the massive aircraft into a barrel roll, tipping it to a 140-degree bank angle, nearly upside down. He then sends the plane into a steep, high-speed dive towards the ground, simultaneously
pulling the throttles all the way back to prevent the plane from ripping its own wings off. The intense G-forces and speed caused the entire airframe to shudder violently. These extreme maneuvers slam Auburn against the ceiling and walls, giving the captain and flight engineer the opening they need to wrestle the hammer out of his hands. Tucker grabs the radio to contact air traffic control, requesting an armed SWAT team and ambulances. He then engages the autopilot and heads to the back to assist his colleagues. Captain Sanders, his face covered in blood and his vision severely compromised, manages to drag himself back into the pilot's seat. Down on the ground, Memphis ATC is confused by the pilot's slurred speech and the erratic maneuvers on the radar, but they immediately dispatch emergency response teams to the runway. The aircraft is now approaching the airport, but there's a catastrophic problem. Because the flight had just begun, the tanks are full of fuel, putting the plane tens of thousands of pounds over its maximum safe landing weight. In the back of the cabin, the fight breaks out again as Auburn desperately struggles to break free. A surge of pure rage washes over Captain Sanders. He is intensely tempted to get up, go back there, and finish Auburn off once and for all. But a glance back reveals that Tucker and Peterson, using their last ounce of strength, have Auburn securely pinned to the floor. Sanders lets go of his anger and focuses entirely on the impossible task of landing the steel giant. There was no time to use the slow fuel dumping system. Air traffic control cleared them to land on runway 9, but the captain knew this 8,900-foot runway was way too short to stop an overweight DC-10 coming in hot. A runway overrun and subsequent explosion were almost guaranteed. Sanders instantly requested a change of course to the longer runway 36, which offered over 10,900 feet of stopping distance. To align with runway 36, Sanders had to execute a sharp 90-degree turn, followed immediately by a tight 180-degree turn. Attempting such tight banking maneuvers with a fully loaded, wide-body cargo plane at a low altitude was borderline suicidal. With unparalleled skill, Sanders wrestled the aircraft through the turns. He fully deployed the flaps to generate maximum drag and bleed off speed. Even so, the aircraft was rocketing toward the tarmac at a terrifying speed of over 380 kilometers per hour. The massive tires slammed violently onto the pavement. The deafening howl of maximum braking and screaming thrust reversers filled the air. The tires were on the absolute brink of blowing out. Finally, with a mere 1,000 feet of runway left before skidding into the dirt and breaking apart, the aircraft came to a complete halt. Captain Sanders painfully slid open the cockpit window to allow access. Within seconds, an armed SWAT team stormed the plane and arrested Auburn. The scene inside the cabin was horrifying. Tucker and Peterson were severely injured and had to be carried off on stretchers and rushed to the hospital. Miraculously, despite his own grievous wounds, Captain Sanders managed to walk off the plane on his own 2 feet. The nightmare was finally over. But why would a veteran pilot commit such a heinous crime? The answer was found among Auburn's belongings, a letter written to his ex-wife lamenting his disastrous financial situation. Investigators discovered that due to his forged flight logs, Auburn was scheduled to be fired the very next day. He was facing complete financial ruin. However, he had found a twisted way out: FedEx's $2.5 million life insurance policy, payable in the event of death while on the job. His chilling motive was exactly this: hijack the plane, murder the crew, and crash the aircraft into the FedEx headquarters to exact revenge on management while securing millions for his family. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces fit together perfectly. If he had used a firearm, the bullet wounds found in the wreckage would have proven it was a hijacking, nullifying the insurance payout. That's why he smuggled hammers in a guitar case. The blunt force trauma to the skulls would look identical to the impact injuries expected in a typical plane crash. The reason he kept pulling the circuit breaker for the black box was to ensure the sounds of the struggle wouldn't be recorded, leaving absolutely zero evidence of foul play. Auburn Calloway was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. This terrifying incident had a profound impact on the aviation industry, leading to significantly stricter regulations regulations regarding deadheading personnel and mandatory security screenings for flight crews themselves. The 3 heroic pilots were awarded the highest honor for heroism, but their story has a bittersweet ending. Due to the catastrophic hammer blows, Tucker lost a significant amount of motor function. Peterson suffered permanent nerve damage, and Sanders was left with severe vision problems. Despite performing an absolute miracle in the sky and saving countless lives, these heroes could never again pass the strict medical examinations required for commercial aviation. They were permanently grounded. Thank you for staying with Flight 404 until the end of this nerve-wracking case. If you enjoy these true, suspenseful stories, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until the next flight, stay safe.